Just make sure my audio is working okay. Give me a couple seconds. Let's see. Yeah, camera looks good. Everything's good. Let me check the audio real quick. Let's see. Live. There it is. Cool. All right. So let's do it. Week 3. So I guess a quick recap for anybody joining us new or forgot in the last 7 days or don't even know what the hell I'm doing. So this is a building, right? Last week we had just kind of taken that first idea just a little bit further, right? It was mostly just kind of like a real like deep dive into how I actually improve quality, right? I tried not to take the model too far. If you watched last week, it really is the same pieces over and over again, right? I had the base structure kind of worked out where I can pull up the model, but it's fine. You can see it here, right? So, you know, we had the base structure, and then I just made like this roof structure, and then, or I think it was like this one, and then I just duplicated it over and over again. You could see it again and again there. You can see that this piece was this piece, you know what I mean? It's just like the same pieces duplicated around. Really the main thing that we're trying to do is create the illusion of detail. This way we can actually like paint it up, right? Like I was saying before, generally speaking, I'd probably take this a little bit further for like work and various things like that. But for this stream, I try to kind of keep it a little easier because, you know, generally speaking, a model of this level really isn't that crazy. So most students will be able to kind of keep up with that, right? Generally speaking, if you open Blender before, you know I'm not doing anything crazy here. It's just repeating shapes, making things, and then all I did after the stream was just apply a color, right? Because this week we're going to be talking about materials, right? How do we get materials to, you know, look like whatever it's supposed to look like, and the different mentality that we have to be in when we're in a phase like this, where we're talking about, I guess, more informational design, right, versus the more, I guess, inspirational like keyframes and various things like that. There is it's not a huge difference. Painting's painting at the end of the day, but there are some things that I will try to keep in mind a little bit more versus, you know, I guess when I'm doing keyframes, you can kind of get away with more brush strokes and more indicated things when you're doing keyframes. But when you're doing stuff like this, more informational, you have to spell out most things in the scene to a pretty high degree, because somebody's going to be looking at this and they're going to have to build it, right? Generally speaking, like the models that we provide to the modeling team really aren't that good. Most concept modeling that we interact with at the studios, right, they're really not that crazy, right? There's some people, they're insane, but even some of the better 3D artists, 3D concept artists that I kind of work with, their models are just, you know, it just makes actual 3D models like throw up, right? It won't work that way. On top of the fact that this is Blender versus they usually use like Maya or 3ds Max or various things like that. So, right, we just kind of want a base shape, right? We're gonna kind of push into this and make it better, right? And try to show you what to kind of think about and how to actually like build up textures, right? Because oftentimes we get stuck in this pattern of like, maybe it was me, but you know, when you first start, right, you create your shapes and everything looks pretty good, and then you throw in a photo, and unless you paint photo real, right, it gets really hard to decide like, how do we actually paint this? Because I think for a long time, even just painting rocks was like, it was either mega stylized or it was like just a photo, right? I didn't really have any in-betweens. And so I guess opening up that flexibility, showing us how we construct things is kind of where I want to go today, right? So this is kind of what I did for the past 7 days. I mean, I didn't work on it for 7 days, but you know, this is from last week, right? I just kind of set dressed it a little bit. Obviously a lot of these pieces, they're just like cubes and just pieces from the building that I just colored gray, and then I just made some spheres to represent like foliage and stuff like that. We'll fix all those, we'll make those better. but we just kind of need placement, right? Because like I talked about in previous weeks, what we're aiming for, right, is something like this. Oops, there it is. So, an artist named Lockdo, probably not how you 100% say his name, but the whole idea is we're looking for something like this, right? Isolated building designs. This is very different than the keyframes that I was doing before, right? The keyframe from previous month was a lot of like, mood, tone, story, right? We really weren't looking at any individual buildings. There were buildings involved, right? But we weren't really like, I guess, deep diving into the architecture because that's not the point, But now, this is that kind of flip into the next page of your portfolio. When you have a portfolio, what you do is you make the keyframe and then flip to the next page, scroll, whatever. And then the next thing would be whatever the main idea is in that previous scene, right? So in this case, probably a building of sorts. So this is kind of what we're going to be doing today, right? And you can kind of see the resemblance there, right? Pretty, I mean, it's not 100% the same, but, it's basically the same, right? So, this is just kind of like how I like to work. I mean, to be honest, most people work this way, especially in a concept-y kind of environment, just because it's one of the more efficient ways to kind of do things. You know what I mean? It's just like it's easy to kind of still see what the designs are, and then you're not, there's not a lot of indication kind of happening. Something that I do want to point out, right? When we're doing designs like this, I never like to end it at just the building, right? So for example, boop, nope, right there. Turn all that off. Okay. So whenever I'm designing, I never like to do just like a thing like this, right? Because it's not really the whole picture. You know what I mean? Like the building itself, yeah, technically speaking, this is the building, right? But the footprint of the building and the kind of area that it occupies, generally speaking, is more than, just the walls and the roof and, whatever's directly connected to the building, right? We kind of want like 10 to 15% kind of outside of that, right? Because when they plant this in a scene, they still need to see how it's set dressed, right? Like if it's in a if it's a game, right? There's a footprint that it occupies, right? Like the front lawn kind of area, right? You don't need to see the whole lawn if it's just grass, but you do need to see like the trim, the flower beds surrounding the building, you know what I mean? The other stuff around it. And so whenever I design stuff like this, I try to go about 10 to 15% outside of that. So in this case, this is just like the layers that I kind of built up. I have my bushes in the front. I have my kind of rock-esque representations here. I have some other stuff for the building separated out. And then that's another thing. Some bushes in the back, right? And then a background gradient to kind of help us understand the depth and just like the plane we're kind of looking at, right? Like I try to light that floor plane and the back plane's getting like less light essentially. And then I had this extra thing because the building itself, like we have talked about in previous weeks, it's underneath the waterfall. The whole idea behind this building is that it's catching water from this waterfall and it's like processing it, and they're doing like coffee ceremony stuff with it, right? And so the waterfall was there and I was like, that looks kind of weird, right? Just like it was like this, and I was like, that looks kind of not great, right? And I was like, it needs something, it needs more context. So this is kind of where I started adding other things. So I kind of added like some mist in the background just to kind of give it an abstract kind of effect, and then trying to kind of indicate that there's rocks back there. We don't need to fully render out the rock because this isn't about the rocks, right? But it is information that is necessary for the scene to make sense, right? It has to be next to a rock because that's part of the building structure, because there's water coming from those rocks, if you remember from the previous month, right? So very purposeful, and there's indications there, and you can kind of get away with certain indications, like that background is probably going to stay basically exactly the same. Obviously the front building is going to look a lot better, so on and so forth, but just understand what's the goal behind this, right? Which is we need to communicate what exactly is happening in this scene. or in this building for someone else to build, right? Because I'm probably going to hand them this model, but generally speaking, the proportions are probably a little bit off. There's not a lot of smaller details that we would need, especially like if a camera like goes into the building, right? You need a lot more detail. You need a lot more kind of small things, set dressed around. And if we just kind of want to get that main building first, I'll do something like this, and then I'll do another scene where we kind of start seeing the important things, like the back interior walls, some of the support structures, so on and so forth. So this is where I start, and then we'll kind of dive into the other stuff later if we feel like it, right? So, alrighty, let's do this. So, I did have some things I wanted to talk about. So as I kind of like I guess as we're looking at this now, right, it looks a little bit different, I guess, from the gray model that we had in previous weeks, right? It's fun because like this design, the color scheme that kind of came up was a couple different things, right? I went to Osaka Castle. Was it? It wasn't last week. It was a week before. I think it was a week before, with a friend. And then we're just walking around, and I didn't go there to like reference gather or anything. We just went because we were in Osaka, right? And like it was fun because we were walking around on one of the floors. It's a museum that only really if you ever go, the outside only looks like a castle. The inside looks like just a normal museum. But it's cool because inside there was a replica of Hideyoshi's tea ceremony kind of like room. Like he had this like room that would be assembled anytime he would want to use it. I think it was more of a special occasion thing, but it's basically like a small room, right? That would be kind of like assembled and disassembled for events and various things like that. But the cool thing was it was like clad in gold. This guy was like running deep, right? And like the walls and interiors and everything were all gold, and it was like a very nice kind of like fancy like thing, it's a tea ceremony room for like the ruler of Japan at that point. And so when I saw that, I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. And I didn't really think much of it, right? Because I saw that like 2 weeks ago. So this was before this model was made, or at the very least before this stage of the model where I started adding color. And I was like, okay, cool, let's start adding a color palette. And I actually had like a brown and white version where it was like the walls were white and then the roofs were like kind of, normal, just normal things. And I think it just didn't feel right because one of the references that I had was that fountain pen. So that fountain pen is a pretty expensive fountain pen. I think it's like $1,700 or something like that. But basically, it's for a pen, expensive as hell. And that's one of the references that I had used, right? It's on the reference board. It was the extra one, right? I'll pull it up just so we can see it. Wait, let me do this off screen so you don't see all my files. Boom, live stream. Week 1. There you go. All right, so so I had this fountain pen here, and I was like, okay, I'm not really using it that much. I do have some plans with it, and this is kind of where the inspiration starts kicking in a little bit harder. But I had this pen, and it's like very expensive. It's not, it's not your big pen, right? And I was like, well, how do we integrate that idea into my project a little bit better, right? Because I was feeling that I was like, it's not really doing what I wanted to do. It was kind of there. I put some of these ginkgo leaf patterns on the pillars. I didn't talk about it, but I did do it here. This was week 2. I kind of had this idea kind of happening, right? So that's where that came from, right? I was like, oh, what if I just put that pattern? But I felt it was a little weak. It was just not like it was the literal translation of like what we're seeing there to like what we're seeing here, right? It's like not, it's too 1-for-1, and I didn't really like it, so I didn't really talk about it that much. I mean, it kind of pops up in various places because that's the pillar I was using. But overall, I really didn't care too much about it, right? I did like the gold trimming on it. I just didn't like the fact that it was a ginkgo leaf because that's specific to this pen story, right? This image. And what I want to do is convert that. I want to take the ideas, right? And so with the form language of this, right? Just deriving one of the key words, expensive, fancy, extravagant, right? I was like, oh yeah, that's right. I saw a tea house that was just over the top, right? It's just clad in gold, right? Which is crazy, for that time, So I made the whole inside this kind of gold leaf. I mean, it's just yellow, but the whole plan was to make this whole kind of, oopsies, where's that? This whole back section, the walls and the ceiling and the kind of doors and panels, just covered in gold, right? That roof, right? I was thinking more of a bronze. I'm not really quite sure how I'm gonna do that yet, but basically like a yellowish, shiny metal, right? And then the outside, thinking about this kind of this part specifically, you could tell it's a little bit darker compared to this. It's gonna be like a lacquered kind of like thing, because that's the if you remember the reference that I pulled that from, the tea ceremony pot where it's like the hot water sitting in there. So I was like, oh, what if that was like kind of covered in some sort of filigree or some sort of like design motif that was reminiscent of that pen, and that this was maybe like a darker like granite or something. It's just like a nice kind of stone that's probably hard to find, and this whole thing just kind of gets elevated into like a different kind of realm, right? Because before I had the white sides, I had it very similar to what we're looking at here, right? Not the dark blue versions, but this one, right? We still have gold here, which that idea was still kind of prominent, but it was like the white sides, and I was even considering changing that to something else, but ultimately, right, you can kind of see where that reference is kicking in, and I didn't even realize it would kick in. It was something where I put this for last month, like in June, right? This was like, it was part of the week 1 things, and like I said, during that time, it was very much like, I was like, I might use it, I might not. It's just there to kind of just give me a little bit of inspiration, right? But now it's actually doing something, right? So this is the kind of ideas this is what I'm talking about. When we say extra, I don't try to organize it into the board in any particular way. What I try to do is just keep it around, keep seeing it, keep, letting it infiltrate the brain, right? And as you're walking around doing things, ideas just kind of pop up, right? Like, I'm not actively thinking about this project day in, day out, right? But I am seeing things in the world, and as I see things, I'm like, oh, that's kind of cool, that's kind of interesting, and then my brain just starts making these connections, right? And so, it didn't have to go that way, but the whole point is, it could have went any way it wanted. And in this case, I just kind of wanted to go that way, and just try to see how it goes, So hopefully that makes sense. If there's any questions on that, let me know. But this is kind of where that inspiration for me kind of leads, right? It's ultimately making decisions that I wouldn't normally make, or trying to inspire directions that I wouldn't normally kind of see or do, right? Just because, it's supposed to be the wrench in the gears, right? Because if you keep making the same decisions, right, when you're designing and you're making the same decisions over and over again, you're going to come up with the same designs, right? How many of you have ever like made designs where you did it for one project? I do this shit all the time. You could probably say that about a lot of the work that I've been doing for these streams, but it's something where if you make the same decisions over and over again, right, the projects will tend to look the same. That's why, like, some artists, it's not good or bad. It just depends on what you kind of want. But there's some artists that will do things and it feels distinctly them, right? And it's something where it's not wrong, but it has to be intentional, Like, the whole point is, when I design something, it's because I chose to design that, rather than, oh, it's just my style, or this is my look, or just my interests. Because when you jump onto a project, generally speaking, you don't really get to pick what the look and feel is gonna be, right? Because the first the first people on the project are the leads, the directors, or whoever, and they're kind of deciding on what that look and feel is going to be, right? It's not really your choice. On the more junior, mid-level, and even most senior level artists, they don't really get to choose what style they work in, because generally speaking, you're just kind of there to do what they want you to do. You have input, but you don't really have that many that much choice, right? And so, you want to be able to adapt to a lot of what's going on, right? They tell you, hey, we have this artist for inspiration, can you match that style? We have this artist for whatever, and you're combining looks from various different projects. Like every project that I've on, they're always like, oh, it's a little bit of this person, a little bit of that person, and a little bit of this inspiration, and then it kind of like culminates into something, right? You have to be flexible like that. And if you're not, it gets really hard to find consistent work, right? Because, let's say, for example, you find work, and then the first thing, like the first project that you jump onto happens to line up with your look and feel, right? Like, whatever you naturally design, the first project kind of works out, right? That's great. That doesn't happen very often, but it does happen, right? It's the second job, right? It's when you jump onto another project where it's like, oh, hey, you did really good on this project, but we're kind of shifting gears, whether it's at the same studio or even like a whole different studio. You might have experience on one thing, but you have to be able to switch gears into like switch styles and switch, I guess, the general output, because the project's probably not going to be exactly the same, right? And it gets really hard to find consistent work if you're only kind of like ever doing one type of look. You know what I'm saying? So, but that's the idea. That's kind of what we're doing here. And then yeah, let's get into it. So this week we're gonna be talking about materials, right? So I'm gonna do a quick demo that's kind of outside of this, and then we'll get into like doing this stuff in a second. The reason I want to do this is because I want to kind of show you my thought process when it comes to just doing materials at all, right? Because a lot of us, we do have issues with just creating, like, I guess, just interesting materials, or like how to consistently make something, right? So I'm just gonna make a sphere here, pretty simple. Boom. Let's do this. So when we're doing our materials, right, something we want to kind of think about is, how do we break this down? Because if you've ever tried to do a material study and you do kind of like everything at once, right? Meaning you're doing like material indication, you're doing lighting, you're doing color, and you're doing, volume, like shape, it gets overwhelming. It's too much to handle at once. And oftentimes the gradients aren't really that smooth. A lot of things, like when you're doing texture, it's really hard to do lighting, and vice versa, so on and so forth. And so with this, with material studies, really what we're doing two things, right? We're learning how to observe, and then we're learning how to break down, right? Because we need to be able to kind of look at an object and understand, like, hey, this is what it's doing. This is, generally how it kind of operates in the light, in the shadow, on the core shadow, so on and so forth. And then we need to be able to kind of put that into a process that will make something every single time. And so this is the kind of way I go about it. I'm going to make a chrome sphere and kind of show you how useful just being able to do chrome really is, right? So let's do this. One of the important things about chrome, right, is that we actually need something else first, right, which is the surroundings. So right now it's just going to be a sphere on a table, so nothing really that crazy. I'm going to kind of add a color to this so we can kind of see it. So the first thing we want to do whenever we are creating our sphere, right, is that we need the sphere to have a texture, right? Don't worry about lighting. Don't worry about the form and various things like that. What we want it to do is we're trying to wrap this sphere in just a neutral ambient texture, right? So in a chrome spheres version, right, for a sphere, like of chrome, right? It's reflecting. So the texture, the baseline material, right, is the surrounding image being projected on. If this is like a wood sphere, right, the wood grain, you would see the wood grain. If this is like metal, you would see like the rust spots or whatever, right? But absent of lighting, absent of basically anything other than texture, right? Or I guess material, because we're trying to recreate what we're trying to simulate the different steps that we need, right? So for example, right now, I just grabbed the background. We're just assuming this whole background kind of wraps around the entire the entire sphere, right? And so what I'm going to do is kind of work through the logic of this. When you have a sphere, a chrome sphere, like a mirror, right? Light is going to hit the object and bounce into your eye, right? So we know that when light hits something, it's going to kind of lose energy, lose intensity, and then go back to, go into your eyes to see it, right? And so losing intensity usually means getting darker. In this case, I have the background. I just literally clipped it into that black sphere. And what I'm going to do is lose the intensity, right? Gets closer to black. I'm just going to go a little bit because mirrors, right, chrome, is pretty efficient because you can see your reflection. So it's not like 100% energy loss, but there is, generally speaking, a little bit, right? And a lot of it is just to kind of, for me to see the sphere too. The next thing is I need to start making some of the surroundings, right? So in this case, what we see is the floor, right? The ground, or I guess the table that, this whole thing is kind of sitting on, right? Oops. Let me check something. There. All right, cool. So, generally speaking, I try to just create a quick table, right? So we're gonna do something like this. Boom. All right, that's part of the table. Boom. If there's any questions on this, let me know. I know this is like turning into like just a full-on demo, but it's important to know this step, and then you can kind of do whatever you want. Right, so something like this, right? And then I'm going to make the table. All right, there you go. So I have the table kind of reflected onto the sphere. And the reason why it's curved like that, right, is because the sphere itself is curved, right? So just like when you see looking like chrome, the image distorts. That's what we're doing there, right? So that's what that is. So technically speaking, it's over, right? But, it still doesn't look 100% right. We're missing a couple things. Chrome sees the environment. So generally speaking, we're probably going to see a camera, right? So I like to include a camera into this. It's just a thing. You can do a face, you can do whatever, but the whole point is we need more things in this scene for it to kind of like make sense, right? So I'm going to make a camera, just a quick one. We're not going to see it too much. I mean, you'll see it dead on, but like it's not really about the camera is what I'm trying to say. All right, cool. And then I'm going to do this. Oops. Oh, yeah, there you go. That's fine. I'm gonna kind of lighten that up just a bit. We're just kind of like rendering camera pieces at this point, just like something of a lens, right? Nothing really that crazy. And then I'm gonna flip that in, do that one more time. Cool, right? Just simulating lens stuff. Okay. Next thing, right? I need that shape to be kind of like a top plane, for example, like this camera section. So I just want to do something like that. There's like, I don't know, bumps, something. Anyway, nothing really that crazy. And the last thing, right? I kind of want to do a tripod because it needs to feel like this is a full scene. Because if you're kind of missing some things, we don't always know why. Because like humans, people as a whole, we don't always know why something is. We just know that it's missing something, right? Same reason why when you're looking at like somebody's drawing of a person, like maybe someone a little newer, it's like it looks like a person, but it's like slightly off, right? There's something off about it, right? Like, students doing like figure drawing, stuff like that. That's kind of what I'm talking about. And so whenever you're doing like whenever you're seeing these things, because we see it so often, you just know that it's off. You don't know why, right? Same reason why your mom can usually tell why your drawing feels a little weird. She doesn't know why, but she knows that something is off about it, right? Because we're so used to seeing these things. When we see chrome, especially in photos, there's always a camera, unless it's like, you know, Hollywood CGI stuff. Generally speaking, we're taking a picture of it and you see the reflection, right? And so we need to kind of create that illusion, right? So I'm just making this camera. I made it dead on because what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go to filter, liquify. There's a circle here with the arrows kind of pointing out. I'm just going to kind of like bloat this thing, right? I kind of made this like about the size of the sphere, and I'm just going to do this. And so now we get this like warping effect, right? So now it feels a little warpier compared to what it was before, right? Really nothing like crazy. Oops, filter, liquify. There you go. Really nothing that crazy, but it just kind of helps create that illusion, right? So we have the back wall, we have the table, we have the camera, right? Now we need some sort of light source. So what I'm going to do is just light this from the top, and I'm actually going to physically show that light source. So in this case, it's going to be something like this. Boom. Let's do like maybe there's like some sort of like grid thing, or like one of those like lights in the background. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? There it is. Boom. Bam. There it is. Okay. Pretty boring so far, but hopefully this all makes sense. Boom. Get something like this. Is it too big? Yeah, it's too big. Let's do 20. Just want one of those like grid lights, you know what I'm talking about? It just creates an interesting shape. So let's get something like that in the middle. It's probably gonna warp this way outwards. Yeah, we're doing that. Cool beans, dude. So we are done, right? This is the kind of base level. The farther you take this, the better it's gonna be. But what I want to emphasize here is that I did not, I guess, do any real lighting. There is a light in the scene, but it's not like lighting the sphere just yet. This is the base material. If you did this with wood, it would just look like a wood sphere that's kind of like flat, or a wood circle really, with like, you know, lines that kind of lead in that perspective. It's whatever material it needs to be. We're doing chrome because it's important to know that this is the kind of base of all materials, right? So the next thing we want to do is start kind of creating our light source, right? So I'm going to start with the interior scene here, right? There's a light kind of coming from the top, so I'm going to kind of light that a little bit more. I'm going to darken that kind of bottom side because this is I'm lighting the environment right now, technically speaking. On top of that, there is a light that's kind of hitting the table right in front of us, and then the sides are probably go a little bit darker. So this is like me just representing a lot of the ideas here, right? So this is where it gets fun. I'm gonna duplicate that and I'm gonna flatten it down. This is step one, right? And so from here, what I need to do is actually start thinking about the next stage, right? This is step one, meaning the texture / material phase. Next step is lighting this like a normal sphere, right? So like a normal sphere, let me just show you. I'm gonna put this in like gray or something. There you go. Really what we're gonna be doing is this, right? I'm just gonna create this sphere. I'm gonna do it the exact same way too. I'm just creating this sphere, right? And then you create the shadow side. You do a little bit of reflected light. You do some ambient occlusion towards the bottom, right, where the shadow is going to be, and then a little bit of like reflective light towards the top, and then a Fresnel effect on the sides, right? Boom. There you go, right? Pretty simple. So what we want to do is apply this lighting to this sphere, right? Because all shapes are going to be lit the same way, regardless of material. The lighting is still going to affect it the same way. But it's up to the material to kind of see how it kind of like receives that, right? So what we're gonna do is this. We're gonna take this sphere. I'm gonna start doing that. So I'm gonna light this as if it has nothing to do with chrome. Midtones instead. Sorry. Throat be gummy. All right. Light side's kind of there. You'll see it. You'll see it better when I hit the shadow sides. Boom. Highlights. Let's tackle that down. Right. You see how it's feeling rounder? You know what I mean? It's like it's slowly kind of coming together. Right. Really nothing that crazy. I'm gonna kind of darken up some of this stuff here. I'm gonna kind of increase the lightness over here because it's the light's coming from the top, so I'm gonna kind of keep doing that. And then I wanted to do some of the Fresnel effect. The Fresnel effect is a I've explained it before on stream, but pretend this is the water line, like the ground effect, like the ground when you're looking at the water, right? And then you're standing here. This is you, right? This is your head, and you're looking at the water. So whenever you're looking at water, it's going to you're going to have a different kind of image depending on where you're looking at, right? Because you ever look down, like you're standing in water and you look down, you can like see the rocks, you can see your feet, you see basically straight through it, right? Like the more extreme this angle is, right? You're kind of looking down versus like this angle over here. I don't know what angle that is, but versus that angle, right? The more perpendicular you are with the water, the more you're able to see through it, right? Because the more parallel you are with it, right? The angle here is a lot smaller. The more reflective it gets, right? And so there's a gradient, right? It's reflective on this side, transparent on this side. And then that's what's happening with water. We've all generally, hopefully, we've seen what water looks like, right? If you haven't, go find some water. But the sphere is the same idea, right? When we look at a sphere, right, even looking at it, from here, this side is perpendicular with our eyes. This side is more parallel. It's not parallel, but it's more parallel with our vision. So it's going to be more reflective on the sides than it is in the middle. Is really what I'm trying to say. And so, with the Fresnel effect, generally speaking, it's going to start reflecting the outside. Most of the time it's going to be lighter because there's, generally speaking, light things around more often than not. If you're in a dark scene, it's going to reflect darker, right? But it's not even like half the time. Like, if half the time is light and half the time is dark, it's not going to be an even split like that. It's mostly like 80% or 90% of the time it goes lighter, and then like 10% of the time it goes darker. So just kind of know that. But that's what the Fresnel effect is. That's how I'm applying it here. I'm not a scientist or anything, but the whole point is we're doing things for a reason. We know why we do things, right? So I'm gonna kind of do that. That's a little too heavy. Hold up. Let's go midtones. Yeah, it looks okay. All right. So it's going to catch some of that light. Things are going to get a little bit darker as it rolls, or lighter as it rolls away from your vision, right? Pretty simple. And so you see the sphere really coming in, right? So now all we did was like light the sphere, right? It went from a flat circle to now we're getting basically a chrome object, right? And really quickly we start kind of understanding how this is working, right? And I'm just doing it one step at a time. I'm not really worried about trying to do, I guess, everything at once. Because if you try to paint a chrome sphere all at the same time, you're going to go insane. Because that is dumb. You know what I mean? It just doesn't, it's really hard to do that, right? So I'm just kind of piecing it together, right? It's material first, lighting, and then so on and so forth, right? I'm gonna kind of darken this section down right here. Oopsies. That's the occlusion shadow. I need some reflective light from that floor or that table side there, right? So I'm gonna kind of increase the light there a little bit of like ambient light. And we have basically the same sphere that I just did, but we did it with thing, right? Pretty simple. Hopefully that all makes sense. And we're getting to the point of why this matters, right? Obviously outside of like outside of just painting materials, like, why are we doing here? We're trying to design a building, right? We're trying to do this thing. Because once you know how a chrome sphere behaves, right, you can understand how all materials behave. So check this shit out. I have a representation of what a good render would be, right? It's not the best. I spent like, 5 minutes on it. Half of it was talking shit. So, cut me some slack. But it's pretty close. You can see the components kind of coming in, right? Let's actually do a cast shadow so we're not laughed into oblivion. Boom. Is that white? Oopsies. There it is. Boom. Something like that. Lights top down, so we'll do something like that. And then I'll turn the opacity down on that. Shrink that down. Get that occlusion shadow darker. Get that to 100%. And now that looks like a decent sphere, right? Pretty simple. So, why is this important? Why do I need to know chrome? Because the chrome sphere is the kind of base of everything. Like the fact that you can see anything means that light's hitting it, right, and then bouncing into your eyes, right? Because if light doesn't hit it, you won't see it, right? So the way light interacts with that material is how we get our, how we get the vision of what we're seeing, like how we see the thing, right? And so I'm going to lock this. And what I'm going to do is kind of rough up that surface, right? So if I go to here, filter, blur, Gaussian blur, right? And so when you're at 0 Gaussian blur, 0 roughness, right? You get basically a mirror finish, because if it's perfectly smooth, you can see the thing, right? It's going to reflect back to your eyes. As it goes more and more rough, right, you start getting a more matte surface, right? You start understanding that this ball it's just a normal ball now, right? Because what we're seeing here is just the light of the scene interacting with the sphere, right? So in this case, we have light side, shadow side, just like normal. But the cool thing is all the colors are being introduced correctly, right? It's like a white light pointing down. It's a dark gray surface pointing up, and you can kind of see a little bit of like what's happening in the background. Even like you can even see where the table ends. It's right there, right? Because that's actually how materials work. Generally speaking, you can see these things, right? You might not always know, but even like I have like this plastic, this black plastic thing like on my table, and I can see the window light and then where my wall starts, right? Like if you're looking at my camera, I can see the reflections of things. It's not crisp. It's not like a pure reflection, but you can kind of see where those light shapes generally are, right? And so this is why it's important to understand chrome, because everything starts from that idea of reflected light. Chrome just does it the best. But if you, rough up a surface, then you get a more matte surface. Like this is like maybe a white primitive, what I'm talking about? The ones we kind of do in like, art class and stuff. And so from here, you can do anything that you want, right? And so if I had this chrome kind of sphere here and I wanted something, like a gold, right? So what is gold? It's just a yellow metal, right? And so we're going to colorize this. I'm going to lighten that up, darken that down a little bit so it doesn't go pure white. I'm going to kind of get gold here. So this is still too shiny. This is like a yellow chrome, right? Actually, I'm going to duplicate that. Sorry. Control U, colorize. Do that again. Boom. Let's go a little bit brighter than that. I'm going to kind of lighten that up just a hair, right? You just get your values right? Because, generally speaking, like the whole thing's yellow. So it's going to have a yellow tint to it, right? And then the next thing is, well, it's gold. So it's not as smooth as chrome is. So what I'm going to do, Gaussian blur, not that much, right? But you get something kind of along those lines, right? You can start seeing how now that kind of starts feeling like gold, right? Gold isn't like, it can be, right? But generally speaking, it's not as shiny as like chrome or something, right? Or it doesn't have to be. And so, depending on that roughness is how much of that reflection you're going to get back. Same idea behind like polishing, right? And so with this logic, I'm going to apply that to the rest of that building. Except now, instead of a base shape being a sphere, What I'm going to do is apply that to the cylinder or apply that to the cube or whatever, right? Start with the material, right? Whatever the texture is, and then just light that accordingly, right? Light the shape accordingly, and then you're going to get pretty close to kind of what you have. You just have to kind of understand what's around it. If there's a green grass next to the thing, then influence the object with green. If there's a blue sky, influence with the idea of blue, right? And so on and so forth. So pretty basic. It's just understand. It's not really like, this isn't really a material kind of breakdown course, but the whole point is we're doing this in a very controlled way. We want to understand, like, how do we get to each object? Because when I need to apply this to my building, there's going to be times where you have to paint something. And you're like, I don't know how to do that, right? And a photo is not going to help you. I've especially with reflective materials, I found that when I was first starting, I was really heavily reliant on photo bashing. And so what would happen is they'd be like, oh, hey, we need this like gold thing over there. All right, cool. I'll grab a piece of gold. I'll put it in. Like, it looks like clay. Why does it look so weird? It's like, it's literally a piece of gold, man. There's no way that looks like clay, but it's because it's not reflecting the environment around it. And so it doesn't quite look correct, right? And I didn't really have the skill to kind of hold that up. You know what I'm saying? Like, I didn't really quite have the skills to just be able to paint gold like that. But now that I understand kind of where everything comes from, you can build it, right? You can construct the material. You can construct the understanding of what that surface is doing. And then with that, everything kind of becomes a little more a little easier to understand, right? Just like whenever you're painting something, you have like a green alleyway, and then a red car drives in, like a green, like there's a green light or whatever, neons or whatever, right? It's a weird color, and then you bring in a color that would behave really weirdly in that green alley, like red, and you're like, I don't know what color to paint this car. It's probably gray, right? There's a lot of grays involved in making that happen, and so you're kind of troubleshooting your way through it. Materials are the exact same way, right? Oops, sorry, hit the mic. Long explanation, a mouthful, probably boring as hell, but I hope that makes sense because I'm about to speed run the rest of this painting, right? Because, right, it's pretty, pretty chill. Hopefully that makes sense. If there's any questions, let me know. This is materials kind of like can be a handful oftentimes, but if you just kind of break things down in a very like organized way, you can usually work through it pretty well, right? So sick. All right, guys, sorry for the long-winded rant demo. Let's get into this. I'm gonna kind of start with the bigger kind of sections here, and I probably should have cut this out beforehand so you guys don't have to watch this, but it is what it is. Let's see. Oh, if there's any questions from anybody, in the Discord, in the chats, or whatever, definitely hit me up. I do have some things I want to talk about, but for now, I'll just kind of chill for a second and let people kind of, I don't know, gather thoughts. Boom. Dang. All right. Oh, let's bring on that ruler. One problem that I have, because so I have everything on my right side. My whole menu system is all on the right. The tools, because I'm right-handed, and when I was working on Cintiq, I didn't like having to like cross sides to like click on tools, so I just brought all the tools over. But the issue that I run into is now when I use the lasso tool, right? I'm zoomed in because I need to see how accurate I'm being, right? But then when I'm going off screen, I can't like move it because the lasso needs to get off of the canvas to like start sliding us over. So I have to like turn on the rulers. And when I use the lasso now, you can kind of like, and the degree in which you're able to, oops, sorry, hold up. There it is. The degree in which you're able to, I guess, influence that depends on like how much you're going across the canvas. So like, for example, oops, why am I struggling with this right now? There you go. No, wait, hold up. There it is. So like I have to like turn on the ruler to kind of do stuff like that. So it's a little weird, but it is what it is. How's life, guys? How are the things? How's the family? Boom, boom. Let's see. I'm probably gonna ignore these windows as I like design this thing, so, and I'll just like bring them back later. Cool. All right. I had a question for people that are here watching. I guess how do you know? Like, do you, like whenever you're a student, I think one of the bigger questions that that kind of comes up is like, how do you know when you're ready? You know what I mean? Like, it sucks because I've had conversations, like I've had, like, just throughout, like, either teaching or working as a whole, I've had conversations with students where they'll come out of university, right? Like 4 years of college, and they're, you know, whatever college, mostly not art colleges, and to be honest, even some art colleges. They'll come out of it, and they're like, hey, so I just graduated, I'm looking for work, right? And they're like, what do you recommend that I do? I'm like, okay, cool, yeah, let's look at your portfolio, right? Because that's what matters, the portfolio. And I'll look at it, and in my mind, I'm like, oh no, they are usually like at the starting line of being a student, right? Like oftentimes, I'll get a portfolio from, usually it's like university level schools, where they're kind of like more general education versus like an actual art school, right? But even then, if it's not the top like 3 art schools, generally speaking, even those portfolios, I'm like, it's not, you still got like 4 years, you know. But you can't say that to somebody that just graduated, you know. It's heartbreaking, right? 4 years of blood, sweat, and tears, and to be told like, oh yeah, you're like beginner level, you know what I mean? Like it happens more often than you think. Even like at events like Lightbox, where, because, you know, people are there to kind of network and get crits on portfolios and stuff, and I hear that so often, and I think it's really hard to, like, I guess, as for just students to kind of hear stuff like that, right? Because, you know, you've put in so much time, you know. But I guess, like, you know, something I was talking to with one of my other students was, you know, kind of understanding how to gauge yourself and the people around you, right? Because, you know, you have to know where you're at, because I think what happens in university, because you're in this establishment that talks about safety and talks about you know, just the idea, like, we have this high graduation rate, you know, all of our students are not, you know, we have a high placement rate afterwards, you know, above 90% or whatever, you know. Half of them are like working at, like, you know, just non art related jobs, right? It's just like placement is placement for them, right? It's for the numbers, you know. And I was talking to one of my students, and, you know, the idea was like, how do I know how close I am? I've been doing this for however many years. I've done all these things. And I told him, I was like, usually, like, the biggest thing for me is you have to kind of know what the level is, right? Because that's the biggest thing, right? If you don't know who's doing it, who's around, who's getting to where they need to go, how do you know, like, what you need to do, right? Because at a university, right, generally speaking, or at least for me and from a lot of the people that I've seen, you're kind of like in this bubble, right? You're with the students that you're with, and you could be the best one in that class. You could be the top of the line, You could be so far above everybody else in that line, right? But if you don't look out of that bubble into the actual like bigger sphere of like people, art students, you could find out that you're actually nowhere. And and it sucks because it happens more often than we are aware of, it's kind of like that shock factor. For those that like, for when you're in high school, right? You usually, generally speaking, you go to a high school that's kind of like just a normal high school. Like some people go to art high schools, which is, it sounds like make believe, to be honest, but like it sounds incredible. But like, I think for me, I just went to a normal high school, and generally speaking, most of us pursuing art um, are are the better artists in that school, right? Like just because you just did it more, you stayed inside, you did a thing, whatever. Generally speaking, most of us are like, hey, I'm an artist, I can draw, and then everyone kind of knows you as that artist that can draw, because you just could draw better, right? And usually it's because you're like drawing in class or doing whatever, like usually just it's behavioral things that made you there versus like I guess an inherent gift that that we're born with, and so that shock of leaving a high school where you're known as the artist and going into an art school is huge. I know for me, like, not that I was like cocky about it or anything, but you're just so used to it, because generally speaking, is you just hear it a lot, and you could just draw better than most. Better than most meaning most people don't draw, that's why you're at that level. And then you get to an art school and everybody in the school is that kid, and that now you're like, shit, and you find out you're not even like close to the top kind of idea, right? I know that was the case for me where, you go from being like the artist that's the artist of the family, the artist that's around or whatever, and then go into an art school, you're like, you're the bottom of the barrel, it's not even close. And you're like, how is this person even that good, Unfortunately, that happens on multiple levels, and that happens in the professional, or like I guess going into the professional field, right? Where you are, you're like, your portfolio looks good compared to your classmates, right? To compare to the group that you're kind of surrounded in, and then you go to an event like Lightbox, or even just applying to places in general, and you're not even getting looks, or you're even getting bad reviews on top of that, right? It happens so much. And it's just because, generally speaking, we don't really know, we don't have an idea of what the actual caliber of students are. You know what I mean? Like it sounds, it just sucks because it's like, how do you know? You know what I mean? Like how do you? Because you went to school and you're told that you should know these things and you learned them, but then you actually get into the field and you find out there's like these like insane prodigies at these prestigious art schools, like just killing it, and you're like not even close to that level. And this is kind of what I'm getting to, is that having a community, that you can, that is a community where people are actually finding work. I think a big thing that happens a lot, because obviously the people here watching this thing right now, generally speaking, they know about me and then they know about my community, right? So really, to be honest, I'm not even talking to you guys because you're already there. But a lot of people that are kind of, starting, or, kind of in this art sphere, like you kind of start in this smaller bubble and then you realize that there's a bigger one, And I think like trying to figure out how close you are is directly tied to how close the group is that you're around. Does that make sense? Like for example, we have an art group here, right, where there's people posting daily, right, or often, right, and then you can kind of see who's getting work, right? Some people are like, oh, I got my first job here, or even within your own friend group, it's like, oh, I found this thing, I'm working at this place. I even have one of my students right now, we just congratulated him for finishing a project. And it's when you see that, that's when you start kind of learning where that bar is, right? Because, the bar is the bar. It doesn't change that often. It's kind of, it's pretty static once you're really in it. And just understanding that, like, when you see these other people finding work, right? The first thing that you should really be asking yourself is, am I capable of that? Right? You're not in the comparison game of like you're better or worse. It's nothing like that, right? But really what we're asking is, when you see somebody's work and you're completely blown away, where you're like, dude, I don't even know what you did. You know what I mean? Like we've all had those moments. I do that. I do that with a lot of professionals now. Like I'm like, I don't even know what you're on. You know what I mean? Like it's crazy. But that's the issue, right? Because if you're saying that about, people that are like students that are kind of within your skill set, or I guess students that are in your community, but they're still students, it kind of tells you where that bar is, because often, because, doubling back to what I was talking about earlier, right? The whole idea is, how do I know if I'm close or not? Because some of us have been doing this for years. Some of us have been kind of working at the craft for a while, and you're like, it's a marathon that you just don't even know where the finish line is, and people keep telling you it's a year away, or it's this far away, or it's whatever, and you're like, cool, I'm gonna keep running, right? So you keep practicing, you're doing your thing for the year, and then you're like, okay, well, I was told I was a year away, but nothing's happening, so, and then inevitably you get another review from somebody else, and they're like, oh no, it's another year away, it's one more year, just, you know what I mean? And then your money's running out and your time's running out, and so on and so forth. And what I want to say is, at the end of the day, like, having a community that is competitive, right? Not with each other, but like a competitive, like the skill level, most, or at least some of them are approaching that professional level, is important. It's so important, because when you see somebody finding work, like a student, and you're like, okay, that person's a student and they just got hired, cool, and then you look at their body of work and be like, can I do that, right? Because they got hired, so that means they're probably qualified to work, right? And then compare that to your work, not in like a, better or worse type of idea, but just look at it and be like, is it a mystery as to how you got there? Is it like, is it weird that they that like, you're looking at it and you don't understand what the hell you're looking at? Like, you should at least be able to derive the general idea, right? Oh, they modeled this out, they painted it, this is how they rendered it. I can render like that, I can paint like that, I can model like that. If you're kind of like going through that checklist, you're probably going to be okay, right? You're probably pretty close. But if you're looking at it and you're like, I have no idea what I'm looking at, like, that's incredible, I don't even know, I couldn't even fathom doing that, right? Usually that means that you're not really that close. You're not close enough to kind of get to, I guess, start working it. And it kind of, I guess, shows you where that bar is. You know what I'm saying? It's really hard to explain, it's really hard to explain how important it is to have people around you that are getting to where they need to go. You know what I'm saying? And I think, like, going back to like some of the things that we're talking about with the community, seeing some of that work, posting, interacting with people, and then talking to them, right? I can, honestly say, like, there's people in the Discord, in the Digital Vegetable Discord specifically, that they are the, like, kind of top level of students that you would expect in the entertainment design industry as a whole. Obviously, I'm not going to name who or anything, or which ones, but I can honestly say that there are people in the group that are the, like, peak level of where a student kind of needs to be, and that's great, right? Because now when you see that work, you're like, okay, cool, that's kind of where that bar is. And we have that for like a couple different people, which is really, really cool. Because I know for my friends, once one of us kind of started finding work, it was like this cascading effect where you kind of see what's getting hired and what's not. And I think, like, for me, the I guess the parameters have been kind of changing, right? Because before, if you could photo bash, you're probably doing pretty well, but now it's like if you can like freaking if you do Unreal Engine, now you're doing kind of okay, like that kind of stuff. And it's just important to kind of see where those lines are and where those kind of, where people are actually getting hired, because it's so hard to like just know that on your own, like for us as artists, where we're so like all we want to do is just go like crawl in a hole and just draw and paint. You know what I mean? Like it sounds um it just we're artists. We just don't want to interact that much with that many people. You know what I'm saying? But we have to, And I just it's just interesting, kind of seeing and I guess experiencing that, and just kind of like thinking about it a little bit deeper. So oh, hold up, I think I got a question in the thing. Let me check that out. Alex is in. Wait, oh. Oh, okay. Wait, yeah. Wait, Alex, you here? No, you're probably watching from somewhere. From above. Oh, there you go. Why is my YouTube thing so like weird? The chat on my YouTube is like so big. Anyway, um, Alex says, I know that some of the misconceptions about what concept art is versus, say, illustration, etc., gets talked about quite a lot, but wondered if you could talk a bit about what about when people first join a studio. What are the common expectations and the daily rhythms of the standard workday? Interesting. Yeah, no, I could definitely talk about that. I think there's. It's funny, like I guess like for a lot of work, a lot of like like just work as a whole, we often kind of talk about or like for students, sorry, for like a lot of student classes and various things like that. We're always talking about quality, right? We're always talking about like illustration quality and painting and various things like that. And so it's you kind of get in the zone of like it's always about drawing and painting, because generally speaking, most students, most like what's happening here, sorry, most students, they're not really at that quality yet, right? Generally speaking, I'm not saying that's always the case, but a lot of times students really aren't quite at the quality bar that we need them to be. So the crits usually end up being, oh, get better at painting, get better at drawing, get better at whatever. And you kind of like, you kind of take that into, I guess, the general, like, I guess, workforce as well. You know what I'm saying? It's it's really hard to like get out of that zone, because for, let's say average like 4 years, right? Um, an average of 4 years, you're kind of always talking about like, getting better at drawing and getting better at painting. And then whenever you get to the workforce, it really comes down to, oh, what are your ideas, right? And I think it's such a big like jump to like mentally, because like whenever I first started, I was like trying to push out quality as much as I could. You know what I mean? Like I was just painting, and I was always worried about how good the painting would turn out. I was never really I guess I was never, not that I wasn't concerned about the idea, but the ideas didn't concern me that much, right? It's like I've said before, where, when I first started, it was like 30 minutes of reference gathering, 6 hours, 7 hours of painting, right? And then now it's like shifted, because now I can paint most things that I want. I'm not really worried about a lot of those things. I'm mostly kind of concerned with how good the idea is, right? And that's one of the biggest things, because when we get into the workforce, there is other people doing quality. There's other, and then on top of that, we might not even be, you know what I mean? We might not even need to do anything past the sketch. I think I've been told so many times by like art directors and things like that, where it's like, oh, don't worry about, really rendering this out. We have the modeling team; they'll handle it, because the final output is 3D. The final output is you know, not, I guess, the final output is not concept art, right? It's not like a 2D asset they put in. It's going to be modeled, it's going to be created and finessed by the rest of the team. And there's a shock factor that happens, at least for me and the people that I was working with, where we just do sketches, you know, we just pump out ideas. And one of the hardest things to do was like get out of that mindset of like trying to always trying to paint something really well, you know. And it can be detrimental, you know, because if the ideas aren't good, it doesn't just like magically kind of slide through, right? It just, you keep going until we figure out the shit, you know. It's it's a really like hard thing to kind of get past, I feel. Sorry, let me bring that Discord back. And so like, yeah, a lot of it is just trying to get past you know, those initial kind of ideas, you know, that the quality bar really isn't a big deal. There is a certain quality we need to meet, right? Like it needs to be representable. There needs to be an understanding of what we're seeing. But a lot of times, you know, the quality bar we see from some of the top artists that we know isn't really that necessary. And to be honest, like all the artwork that I show, like from work and stuff like that, right? It's not really like that, like it's like a small fraction of the actual like pipeline. You know what I mean? Like, because I'll show work where they gave me like, it's like, oh yeah, we have like one of the paintings that I have. It's like, oh, we need this. It was the painting of the big carrier ship. Do this one. I'll pull it up. Shit. Canivo art. There it is. Where are you? Okay, so I did this painting for the studio I was at, and whenever I did it, they're like, "Oh yeah, so we have an investor meeting coming up, and we need a pitch deck to kind of really like, you know, sell, you know, show them what we've been working on. So like really take your time, polish this up." And they gave me a long time to do it. I mean, you know, like a week, but that's, or a week and a half. That's like longer than most assignments that I get, right? And so, you know, I really kind of polished it, and then, you know, it turned out okay. I mean, I could do better now, but you know, at the time, it was one of the better ones that I did. And I show this, and it's like it's misleading sometimes, where it's like, oh, that's one of your concepts. Like, not really, you know. Like it, yes, it, you know, the idea was there, but I also had an art director, and then on top of the fact that, like, you know, there's a lot of notes, a lot of back and forth, and then the timing on it really kind of, you know, it was you know, a long time in the making essentially, and we don't really see that, you know what I mean? And so like there's the misconception of like what what the actual timing on things are, or like what that piece is actually for, because I'll have loose pieces. Shit, I don't have any loose pieces here. I don't really do that many loose pieces. Let's see. Do I have a different one? Yeah, like some of these sketches right here, right? It's like, you know, we kind of spend like, you know, these four were all done in a day. These four plus like 10 more were done in a day. This was probably done in like a day or whatever. But then some of these painting, like this painting, we had like 3 weeks on it. And this wasn't even just me. It was like me and the team, and we just kind of broke it apart and I did most of it, but you know, it wasn't just a single thing. That's why there's like assists right here, right? And then like, you know, various things, like there's so many different things that we're not like aware of, you know, like when it comes to like people creating work, and when, the stuff that you actually see isn't really 100% representative of like what's actually happening, you know. That can be kind of difficult to understand, I feel, if that makes sense. Oops, why is this happening? There it is. Hey, good question. I think I think a big question that I kind of started learning to ask was like, whenever I see people's work. If I'm like truly interested, I'm like, and you know, if it's like a friend or something, I'll ask them, oh yeah, like what was this, you know? And they'll usually tell, oh, it was just a quick concept or whatever. And it's usually like kind of loose, or it's like, oh yeah, this was like a marketing piece that we did. And like it's all kind of just labeled under concept art, right? Because you can do concepts for like inspiration pitch boards. You can do concept art for you know, various you know, just a bunch of different parts in the pipeline from marketing to whatever, you know. It's just what it is, you know. And that can be really eye-opening to kind of see, you know, because not everything is like a one day concept, 2 day concept. It's just sometimes it's more, sometimes it's less, you know. I had a comment in the chats here. Sorry. Oh. Michelle says, "Hi Kenny, do you also work on iPad?" Not really. Well, for one, I kind of, it's funny. I kind of started before iPads could do what they do now, so it sounds old. I'm not that old, but I never really learned how to use an iPad that well, you know. So like for my work, I always use a tablet and Photoshop, just because that's just industry standard. For plein air painting, I'll use an iPad just because I can like take that out and like do stuff with it. You know, it's a lot. You know, I can't just carry a computer with me. I mean, you probably could, but generally speaking, I'm just kind of like if any serious work is happening, I'll do it on a computer with a tablet. I just have an Intuos Pro Medium. But if I'm just kind of like sketching around, I'll probably use an iPad. But I never really do professional work on there. Not to say that you can't, right? Plenty of people better than me use an iPad for work. You know, it's up to kind of you and kind of what you're interested in and what you want to do, right? But you know, you could do it. It's just it does. I do find that it does create some problems. I feel there's a I don't know. There's it's kind of like translation issues sometimes, right? Like, because you know, I think something to understand about work as a whole, right, is that it's a intensely collaborative process. You know, like I was just saying with that painting I just showed, where I was like, oh, there's people that were assisting me on this. You know, we need to kind of be able to one, like cut up a file and send it to each other, and everybody be able to work on it together. You know, and generally speaking, if you're using a program that no one really uses, not that no one uses like Procreate, for example, like a lot of people use it for work and stuff. So that's a little bit easier. But I would say an overwhelming majority of people use Photoshop. And so when you're trying to like work collaboratively, right, it kind of poses some issues, because then you have to export out the PSD or you have to do whatever. It just kind of there's a little bit more friction involved whenever it kind of comes to that, right? Not that it's like terrible. It's not that people can't or don't work around that. It's just those are things that you need to figure out. You know what I mean? And for work as a whole, we're never just working alone, right? Like your art director will take your paintings sometimes, a coworker, a senior will take your paintings. And so there's so many people involved. If you're not really vibing well with the ecosystem, you know, it can be difficult. If you know your ways around that, that's fine. You know, it's not a big deal. But, you know, generally speaking, you kind of want to make sure that you're working, you know, I guess in a similar fashion. That way there's the least amount of friction, because when you send in a file, somebody's gonna have to take that, you know, whether it's the art director or producer, whoever, and sometimes they'll do the notes for you. Like I've had times where I did a painting and then I sent it, you know, to my art director or whoever, and they'll get notes back from their boss, the showrunners, the director, or, you know, whoever, right? And instead of sending it to me, they'll just do it, because it's like, oh, hey, can you like change this quick thing, right? Because, you know, at the end of the day, it's not my painting, right? It's the team's painting. And so it's not really a big deal if your art director takes your painting and like, you know, does something with it, right? Because it's for the greater thing. It's not, you know, it's a part of the team, you know? and you want them to be able to work on it, right? Same reason why I do this in class a lot, but I really stress how important it is to work in a way that is cohesive and in a layering process that is workable, because you are not the only one that's going to touch your painting, right? If you want to be somebody that's hired often, and it sounds weird to say it this way, but if you want to be somebody that is hired, or people like working with you, have good layers, because at some point, I don't know when, but at some point somebody's gonna have to touch your painting, and they're gonna have to do something to it, right? They're gonna have to like fix it, do whatever, or adjust it, use it. And if you merge your cloud layer with the crowd, right? Like just like a background thing, and you're just painting on top and it's chaotic, you are a nightmare to work with. If you're listening to this and you do that, stop it. That is terrible behavior. Just because it just makes like a quick change of like, hey, can you like here, I'm gonna flatten this, right? I just did the thing on top. Like, hey, can you fix this mountain back? Can you just remove it? And like for me, I would just go, yeah, sure, turn it off, right? Or just get rid of that one section, right? But if you like work in a flat way, somebody's gonna have to go in and paint. So this is what's gonna happen. Check this out. I'm gonna have to color pick that. I'm gonna have to go in and do it, right? And then, oh shit, there's a gradient down here where I can't, it's not smooth anymore. So now I have to paint all of that out or cut it out and redo the gradient. And it becomes this entire task, literally a 2-second fix from anybody becomes an 8-hour like thing, and sometimes you're not the one that does it. Sometimes you're in the middle of your assignment, there's things that you got to do, so on and so forth, and somebody else has to fix it, and they will hate you. I promise you this, because like I've worked with people like that, and I'm like, I don't want to say I hate them, that's a little strong, but it's like, dude, I do not want to work with you. And it doesn't, like, your personality can be cool, but if I don't like working with you because your layers suck, like it gets really hard to recommend people for like work. You know what I'm saying? Like if your layering is bad, and it's such a little thing too. It's such a small thing, but it just becomes such a hassle that it doesn't have to be that way. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah. So Kenny, do you also work on iPads? I don't. That's why. Long, rant about why I do certain things, but it's really just about workflow. It's about just trying to make sure that the product, whatever we do, kind of is the most efficient as possible the whole way down the line. Not to say you can't work on iPad. It does cause friction. And for those of you listening to this, I know, because I have students that work specifically on just iPad, and that, I mean, it's fine for you, right? But you got to remember you're part of the bigger system. You got to be able to work efficiently with everybody, not just yourself. But for yourself, yeah, you do whatever you want. Wait. Hey, can you try using the space bar and using lasso tool? Is it whenever I was doing the thing? Hold up. All right, let's get rid of that. Let's use lasso tool. I'm going to do that. Oh, shit, bro. Dude, Michelle, that's why you're the best. There you go. Learn something new every day. I knew you could, like, make the selection and then, like, hold space. All right, so was it that one? No, maybe not. Oh, yeah, you could do this. I know that, where you do this, and then you hold the space bar, you move that around. I didn't know that worked with lasso tool. That's really cool. Sick. Gangster. See? This is why we do live streams. We can learn little tips like that. So, kind of coming back to this real quick, just to kind of talk about it. What I'm doing here, right? I'm trying to create this, for those that don't know, it's like a stone, like for the tea ceremony thing. It's a pot, usually like an iron pot or something, in this like kind of stone like casing. I don't know. And I just want to kind of recreate that feeling. Right now, it's still kind of rough, but I'm just getting a general kind of feel for it, right? The idea is it's different texture than the thing above it. So I'm just trying to like get some of that kind of more stony kind of feel to it, right? And we're just gonna slowly work our way through it. But yeah, that's the idea, right? One piece, almost done. You know, if you actually zoom in, it's a lot of indicated marks and a lot of textural things and stuff like that. But when you zoom out, right, it starts looking like what it's supposed to look like. And now I'm going to do this, but just apply it to everything, right? So, cool. Yo, yo. Where is... Let's see. Time is it 12:25? Damn, time flies. Any other questions? Anything you guys want to talk about? Boom, boom. I'm gonna do this. Oh, do that. There you go. Actually, should I have done this? No, just doing pen. Pen tool be the best. Bro, check that out. There you go. Cool. That's good enough. Finn says, anything I should prepare for Lightbox? It's going to be my first time there. Good question. What do you plan on doing? I guess, so for you specifically, right? Like, what's the goal? Because, like, I think, while you answer that, I'll kind of talk, but I think something that... something to kind of understand about Lightbox, right, is the high... I don't want to say it like this, but like the hiring opportunities there are very limited, extremely limited. A couple reasons for that. Generally speaking, the hiring windows for studios and stuff don't happen on a conventions schedule, if that makes sense. Like, you know, we don't hire based off of how this convention's doing. We just hire when we need them, right? And so whenever you get to this event, right, it's like, oh, hey, all these studios are looking. They're not really looking. They're just there because they were asked by, you know, whoever, right? Because, you know, that's how it works. So the thing to kind of understand about that is, you know, when you get reviews, you're not, you're probably not in the running for a job, right? Like, because, you know, something that happens that I've seen happen so many times is that people will go to Lightbox, you know, and they're extremely excited, and which, you know, you should be. You absolutely should be. It's a great place. But they get these job reviews, or they get these portfolio reviews, and it's like, oh, hey, it's a representative from so and so, and they really like my portfolio, and they kept my business card, and they say, well, keep in touch, right? And yeah, you know, that's great. But then nobody calls. And then, you know, literally we get to like the next Lightbox, like the next year, right? Nothing's happened. And it's like, what the hell, man? Like, fucking, you know, what's happening here, right? Isn't this supposed to be like open, you know, aren't we supposed to be like kind of here for like jobs and stuff, right? And like, I don't really know. Like, I know one person that got a call back, and and I think it's because they had like a working relationship or something already, right? But anyway, like most people I've seen don't really get jobs at Lightbox, right? So why go, right? And this is kind of where I'm not trying to dissuade anybody from going or attending. That's not what I'm trying to say. What I want you to think about is you want to reframe why you're there, because it's important to know the reason you're at this place, right? So when you go to these things, what I highly recommend doing is getting people to remember you, right? Don't do something weird, right? That's not what I'm talking about. But that's like the whole point is what you want to do is get people to see your work and get people to like kind of think about you, right? You're not there to like be like the first person to pick up this job that's there. Like there are some jobs there, absolutely, but the healthier thing to do is to go and meet people in person because that's where these people are, right? The industry is at this event, so where do you need to be? At the event, right? Because you're gonna see and meet people that you've only seen through Instagram or only seen through ArtStation or only seen through YouTube, right? And so it really is like you get the opportunity to actually meet people in person and shake hands, say hi. Same reason why I have this live stream on a Discord so we can talk. But for those of you that don't talk, I don't know who the hell you are. So how do I recommend you for a job, right? This is what I'm talking about. And so when you go to these things, oh shit, sorry, give me 1 second. I got a doorbell.
So anybody trying to talk? I remember Hunter, what's up with you, man?
Not too much, man. Just chilling. Trying to grind out some new project stuff and retool my portfolio.
Oh, word. You did the show in Utah, right?
Yeah, the Adobe one.
Oh, that was so sick. How did you guys set that thing up?
So I knew one of my instructors had like a friend that worked there. He's like, well, I can give you his email, but you're gonna have to kind of like figure out the rest and like sway him into it. And me and Dave just kind of made a big presentation with like, hey, here's our projects, here's what they're about, here's what we want to do. We kind of want to really, go for it and have a cool event. And
Oh, word.
we just lucked out, and they were down for it, so we were able to host it there.
That's sick. And it was just the two of you guys?
Yeah, just us two.
Yo,
So we
let's go.
built. If any of you guys ever do like a physical event, word of advice: don't build walls. Oh my gosh, We thought that would be a smart thing to do. It was, dude, it was so bad. Like the day of, we worked from the earliest we could at Adobe to like put them together and everything after we already pre-built them, and it was just, it was kind of a disaster. We had to like keep them from falling down the end and stuff. It all worked out, but it was bad.
Yo.
Hey, it looked kind of cool. I was like, man, this is a huge presentation.
Thanks. Yeah, it was a good way to do it. Unfortunately, not the end of the road for like getting an industry, right? It's like you spend all the time on a project like that. It's like, shit, you realize all the stuff you need to fix.
Yeah.
You talking about your graduation ceremony stuff?
Yeah, so I did a Dave too, right? We did a show up at Adobe has like one of their big campuses here, where we live together. So we were able to do like an event there and invite a bunch of people and stuff. It was a pretty good turnout. I expect to be mostly like, I have a pretty tiny circle here, so I thought it'd be like, okay, my family, a few friends, and then same for Dave. But we did some advertising, so we were able to get like, I think around like 200-ish, mostly kind of half and half, like half people we knew and then half strangers. So it was cool to see people you don't know actually come and look at stuff and take an interest in it, because then it's not just like, oh hey, I know you, here I am to kind of support you thing.
Yeah, so like when I talked to Dave about that, like I thought it was like your school was doing a thing and you guys were allowed to use the Adobe. It's like, no, that was just you guys, right?
Yeah, we got on our knees and begged Adobe.
That's sick, dude. Dude, that's what I'm talking about, man. It's little things like that. It goes a long way, because now, people that you just didn't know now know of you, and yeah, it's something where you don't know how it's going to turn out. You really don't. But it's something that it puts you in their mind. You know what I'm saying? Like now it's like they're thinking about you and they're like, hey, aren't you that guy that was doing that at Adobe? That was really cool. You've come a long way. Like, like now, let's say you weren't qualified or whatever right now, right? A year from now, when you are literally a year better, dude, they're going to look at that and they'll be like, wow, yeah, you got this much better in a year, dude. That's awesome, you know. And you kind of build that relationship. You know what I'm saying? Let's see. But yeah, sorry to interrupt that. But yeah, like going back to what I was saying, like the reason why you want to go to Lightbox is like is to meet these people and be around, you know? Because it's it's the interactions that matter the most. Because a lot of times, you know, we're always wondering like, hey, what's going to give me the leg up when it comes to, you know, getting a job, doing whatever, you know? It's that stuff. It's like, I know you, you know, or at least I've met you. We had lunch or you just stopped by the table or you're a supporter or whatever. And you weren't weird about it. You know what I mean? Because it's in this field, it's so easy to like find people to like be able to do the work. That's why it's so hard to get a job because it's so easy to find somebody that can do, generally speaking, do what you need them to do, right? Just drawing and painting is, you know, more on the easier side, right? Like they're just getting someone like, hey, I need you to paint a castle. They can paint a castle. That's not the hard part. It's the, do I like working with you? Do you have interesting ideas? Do you, you know what I mean? Are you a person that is interactable, right? Because, you know, unfortunately in our industry, or in, I guess artists as a whole, I mean, there are some weird people out there, you know, some more, some less, but you know, that's the whole idea. And when you go to these conventions, what you want to do is make sure that you just meet people. You know, go to portfolio reviews, absolutely, get people to kind of see you, but don't expect anything because the whole goal of you being there is to interact in a way that you've never interacted before. If you see somebody like an artist like kind of walking around, like you can say hi. That's the cool part because if you do that shit in real life, it's like, who are you, man? Like I'm hanging out with my family, you know. It's like yeah, I don't want to talk about work right now, you know. But if an artist shows up to a convention, generally speaking, they're open to talk, right? I don't want to say always, right? That's not always the case, but they are kind of okay with it, you know, because why? I mean, you know what I mean? Like, why else would they kind of be there? To be real, you know, and so this is part of the idea behind like, you know, talking, participating, because it's really hard to kind of know who people are, right? This is why, like I've said this so many times, and people don't like. I feel like a lot of people don't believe me or whatever. Especially for some of you that are new that haven't taken my class before but are kind of in the Discord. Really like be a part of the community. Say something because, and I don't mean say something as in like type something and leave a reaction every once in a while. Like respond to people's things, participate in voice chats. There's a whole Discord like voice thing that you can just hang out in. If you're doing work, you might as well do it with somebody. And you know, because it's these people that are going to get you a job, right? And it doesn't sound like it because right now it's like, you know, it sounds kind of weird, but I promise you, everybody that works, generally speaking, they hire their friends, you know. There's a thing in the what is it? I forgot where it was. It was in one of the channels. Was it promotions or something? Basically, a game came out recently, and somebody posted it, and they're like, "Hey, me and so worked on this thing, right? That's it right there. I didn't even plan that, right? But it's just like the whole idea is that person and that person know each other from class. I don't know the circumstances in which the job was gotten. You know, it could be a complete coincidence, but that idea isn't really that random, right? That happens a lot. Like everywhere that I've worked, it's literally just because somebody else called me, you know, because you just got to be around, you do things, you know, you say things. And if you're just kind of like a fly on the wall, if you don't participate, you know, it's fine. No one's making you, but no one knows you. No one knows who you are. You're not helping anybody, so no one helps you. You know what I'm saying? It's something where we have to, you know, as a community, right? You want to really get in the habit of helping people even when you need help, right? Because it comes back to you, right? I promise you it does. It's a little bit weird at first, right? Where it's like, just say, hey guys, I'm gonna be hanging out in the art stream or in the Discord doing homework. Anybody wants to join? And I literally know people that work together now that just did that. Like they never knew each other from any of my classes. They just did that, and all of a sudden they were, they're cool. They just found out they have the same interests or whatever. It's so simple. But I feel like it's so easily forgotten, because I just want to go be my own artist. Like if you've ever taken one of my classes, for those of you that have, I'm like, hey, turn on your cameras, be here, talk, because it's not about me, it's about you, right? Because the people that are in this room are going to hire you one day, right? Whether it's to help them out on their project, to do whatever. And if you're not part of that, it's not personal. They just don't remember you. They just don't know who the hell you are. You never turn on your mic. You never turn on your camera. You never participated, right? It's like, so why would they hire you, right? Think about it. Would you remember that person? So, it's as simple as that. Same reason why we do this live stream, right? It's if you can help out, help out. If you can do something, if you can be a part of something, then do it. I used to do stuff like this, not like a live stream, but like when I was a student at Brainstorm, I was admin. I would open the school on Fridays and just say, hey guys, like we're having a study session, right? A couple of us here are doing a thing. Just stop by. And a lot of people didn't, right? It's a school of like a couple hundred people, and a lot of people didn't show up. But the whole idea is it's available for them. And a lot of people did show up, like not the same people, but different set of people. Like there are people that came by, and those are the same friends I have today, and it's the same people that I've recommended jobs for, and the same people. But it's not that I have a grudge against the people that didn't come. It's just I just don't remember you because you weren't there, because it's not personal, I just don't remember you. And so that's really what it's about. It's getting yourself out there, being part of a community. We can do the art. The art's the easy part. It's how do you get people to remember you, and how do you get people to kind of like hire you and remember to vouch for you, because it's difficult. And if you're not part of that group, if you're not saying anything, you never talk, you don't turn on your mic or nothing, you can do that. You're free to do so, but you're making it way harder, like way harder. Sorry, long answer. But yeah, that's what I would recommend doing at a convention, at Lightbox. Just get out there, talk to people.
I flew out to that Brainstorm workshop they did a couple months back, and it was really cool to hang out with like John and James in person.
Yeah, it's funny, man. Like, yeah, it's a lot of effort, right? Like, I mean, you're I don't know exactly where you're at, but you're not in LA, you're not in California. So you flew out at your expense, a couple $100 for the flight, for the place to stay. Probably
somebody is busy. Yeah. Well, sorry. Can you hear me?
Yeah. You're breaking up, but yeah.
Sorry. Man, my internet is so bad. Let me try something really.
But yeah, like, while you fix that, like, yeah, it's little things like that where it's like, yeah, you're not in the area, but it's like you get to meet these people. And like a story about me, like I literally got my first job because I was around, like I went to a Magic the Gathering convention where the artist that picked me up was, and he just happened to be there. We said hi, and nothing came of it, of that moment, right? And I saw him again at CTN, which is before Lightbox, but CTN, and we just talked, and then he said he was opening a school, Brainstorm, and then I just started going there, and then I was around, and you're kind of building that repertoire of like just meeting, and they're like, hey, he seems kind of cool, and I wasn't ready yet to work, but as I was getting better, you start kind of, you're kind of you're in view. Right? And people kind of notice this, and they're like, oh, he's gotten way better since the last time I saw him. Yeah, and when opportunities come up, it just happens. You don't know how. I didn't know that going to this event would get me hired 2 years later, or 3 years later, 2 years later. I didn't know these things, but you just do it because you want to meet people, right? And don't do it in like a shady way. Don't do it for this reason, but meet people because it's good to meet people, and then you'll find out that it pays off in the end, because something with like with what Hunter was just saying, right? Like there it is. Something what Hunter was just saying was he flew out from wherever he's at, so it's probably a couple $100, right? And for the flight, and then place to stay. I don't know if he stayed with a friend or not, but let's just assume did Airbnb, another couple $100, right? And so by the end of that weekend, you're probably $1,000 in the hole, right? Which sounds like a bad trade-off because the whole idea is, hey, I paid $1,000 to go shake hands with people, and nothing came of it, right? Like, I'm not saying that's what happened, but you could see things that way. Or maybe 2 years down the line, he gets hired by somebody that he met there. And it doesn't even have to be the people that he intended to meet there. It could have just been some random guy that was there, or some random girl, or whoever. It just happens to be there. And he gets hired for, let's start off, like normal concept art rate, $85,000 a year, right? Like, 40 an hour kind of thing, right? Very standard rate. And so if you get hired at this place for a year, you just made $80,000. So you paid $1,000 to make $80,000. Yeah, you didn't know they would link up, but that's the thing. You never know. You don't know how things are going to turn out. So you kind of just have to do it. If you can afford it, if you have the opportunity, obviously, pick your opportunities. You can't just be burning money like that. But when you can, show up. Especially with the internet around, be around, talk to people, hang out, because you never really know. It could be a 30-minute phone call that could change your life. And I've said this before with one of my friends. Like, we had an hour video call that led to a 6 painting contract, I mean, 6 painting, at my rate is not cheap by any means. And it literally just took an hour out of my day. And it wasn't even like a bad hour. It was a great hour. We just talked, we had fun, whatever, right? It was chill. And that led to income. You know what I mean? Like, it sounds crazy, but that's what it is. Because if I didn't talk to him, he probably wouldn't have thought of me. Whenever, it's not personal. It's not like he's like, oh, how dare you not talk to me? I'm not going to hire you. No, it's just, I probably wouldn't have been in his mind when it came down to actually, like receiving that call. Because his team came up to him and said, hey, we need some more artists for this thing. Do you know anybody? He's like, I just had a conversation with Kenny. He'd probably do fine, right? And, that's what happened. So little things like that. It goes a long way. I promise you. Cool.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, keep my fingers crossed it doesn't explode. We'll see. I was just really blown away, like, especially guys, kind of, I guess I would say well known enough and kind of connected is like James Pake, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
I've never had somebody like that before. Like, hey, we talk over portfolio and stuff, and be like, hey, man, we should keep in touch, right? You hear that, and it's like, okay, yeah, cool, whatever. And I thought we had a really great time talking, right? Like, it was a lot of fun, just talk about the stuff we liked and industry and whatnot. But then he like found me and added me later, actually, right? And I was like, wow, okay, like that sincerity. I think it's a testament to the success of like those kind of personalities, right? When you take like a genuine interest in everyone, right?
Yeah.
Even somebody like James Pake, right? Like, I think that's really rare. And anybody of that caliber, honestly, I don't blame them for like not looking me up or adding me or anything after we talk, right? Like, that's totally normal. But to do that kind of shows how it pays dividends. Not that you should like think of it like that as a trade-off, but
yeah,
I think it's healthy just for a lot of reasons to like invest yourself in each other's success.
Yeah, you're not, and that's the key that I want to really point out. You're not thinking of it that way, right? Don't, please, everybody here, whoever's listening, do not approach with this idea that it is going to be a connection. I need to make these. Do not do that. Don't. It is going to hurt more than it helps. But go and meet these people with the genuine intention of meeting them, right? Because you don't know what situation people are currently in their professional careers, right? So, for example, did you guys know that I'm looking for artists? You didn't know that. You did not know that, right? Nobody here knows that because I didn't say it, right? But I am. And guess how many people decided to do the live stream plus thing this week or this past month? Two, right? And I'm not saying this to kind of like, to insinuate to sign up for anything. But what I'm saying is I'm currently looking for people to help out with some stuff. And the whole point is these people, they just signed up because they want to get better. They just signed up because they want to improve, right? And that's the pool that I'm looking at whenever it comes to getting hired, right? And it goes the same with literally anybody else. You don't know when somebody's trying to hire you. You don't know when that opportunity is available. But all you have to do is put yourself out there and try day in and day out, because people do notice when you try, right? There's all these reasons to not do things, but when it comes to hiring, you have to just get in front of people's faces. You have to not like force it in front, but you got to post, you got to be around, because when they're looking, you need to have something. Because if you don't have anything, I'm not looking at you, right? And this is the same with everybody else. People that are in hiring positions, right? You just don't know that. You just don't know what that situation is. You know what I'm saying? And I'm not saying this for me or anything to kind of like show off or anything at all. But the whole point is there's hiring opportunities everywhere. And people don't know these things. You just don't know it right off the bat. But you can, at the very least, put yourself out there and do things. I better not see a bunch of people show up out of nowhere, or sending me work and this and that. Don't do that. I've already said it, it's too late. But it is something where, people are always on the lookout, right? People that like artists as a whole, they're always looking out, because you always get these questions of like, hey, do you know anybody? We're looking for this thing. We're looking for this, whoever. And I'll recommend people. I'll literally go down my list, like the Discord that I have, right? The one that we're talking in right now. I'll go in there. I'll just scroll. I'll just look at the list. I'm like, hey, I can't hire that person. He already has a job, or she already has a job. Boom, oh, can't hire that person. They're, whatever. And then I'm like, oh, that person looks cool. And I just save them out. And I send them all over. Whether you know it or not, I send it, right? But if you never post any work, you just get scrolled by, right? It's not personal. I just don't know. How the hell would I know, And that's the reality of what our industry is, you have to just be around. And if it sucks, right? It's not for everybody, it's not something that is, I guess, easy to kind of deal with just on an emotional level, to be completely honest, but it is something that you have to understand. And I get excuses day in, day out from whoever about any reason why they can't do something. And it's sometimes it's a great reason, right? It's like, yeah, take your break, do your thing. And I get that, but at the end of the day, it doesn't help, it doesn't change anything. It's just, the fact is, we don't have work in front of us, so I can't gauge how good somebody is going to be doing or whatever. I'm not saying that every excuse is the same, right? But it is something where generally speaking, an excuse is an excuse. We just don't have the work in front of us, right? It could be a very good reason, don't get me wrong. There's things that happen in our lives that stop us from doing certain things, absolutely, right? But there are some things that just doesn't change anything. It's just, the fact is, I don't see anything. I can't gauge off the work that I'm seeing in front of me. Because that's truly what matters at the end of the day. Any secret trick to getting into concept art or whatever is literally have good work, get it in front of people. It's as simple as that, right? You don't know when it's going to happen, but the more you do it, the more it's going to happen. It's funny. There's like, there's a range of people that I interact with, a range of skill levels from beginner to, you know, to early professionals or whatever, right? And the people that don't like kind of talk about like reasons why they couldn't do something and they just do it, generally speaking, right, those are the people that find work, right? It's just happenstance, just, you know, because like there's people that I'll have interactions with, and there's every reason not to do something, right? And then I'll see somebody else that you know, they have kids, they have whatever, and they still get their work done every single time. They show up every single week, you know, and it's like, you know, there's nothing I can do. You know what I mean? There's nothing I can say to that other person where it's like, yeah, you know, take it easy, you know, like don't kill yourself over this, like don't stress out, you know. But it's something where, you know, if you really want this, you'll make time for it, you know. You'll do what you need to do because it matters, right? It's the difference between you know, looking for work and having work, right? You know, it it's unfortunate that it's like that, but at the end of the day, if we don't have anything to look at, there's nothing that we can gauge our you know, our decision making off of. You know what I'm saying? You know, it's harsh, and it is tough to kind of like go through that day in day out, and that's a whole other conversation. But that is the reality of it. You know, it's, you have to get your work in front of people, and you don't know who's hiring, so you kind of have to get in front of everybody. You know, you have a general guess of like who you know, has the I guess the ability to hire, right? But you know, generally speaking, you don't really know. You know what I'm saying? Oh yeah, sorry I had to answer the door earlier. Japan's delivery system is really bad. Not bad, it's good, but if you don't answer the door, they won't leave it there. And so I've like missed so many packages because it just wasn't home. I'm like, nope, we gotta handle this. I normally wouldn't leave, but they won't humor my leave it at the door speech. I've told them. Cool. We're getting through this. See, it's like we're slowly working our way through it, right? I think obviously a lot of this still is very 3D looking, and I'm just gonna kind of work my way through all of it, right? Like the roofs, like obviously some things need a little less work than others. That's absolutely true. But you know, we're gonna kind of keep going. I'm gonna keep going on this throughout the week. Obviously, we're running out of time soon, but this is it's just this, right? Just zoom in and start working on the base. I think something that happens a lot, something that I want to really explain here, right, is that I'm painting this building and I'm starting with the big shapes, right? I modeled the big shapes, I kind of added some medium shapes, and now going into the painting, I still haven't really addressed a lot of details, right? I'm kind of working on textures and stuff because as I go deeper into this design, I want to kind of address the big things first, right? Get the major planes, get the surfacing down, get, you know, all the stuff, right? Because once I get that, then I can start kind of adding details on top of that, right? It's, you got to paint the wall and then put the image on that wall, right? You can't decorate the wall without the wall being there, essentially. So that's what I'm doing here. I'm trying to get the biggest planes possible, right? Starting with literally the biggest one, the rock, and then kind of moving my way up, moving my way down. Gonna get the roof probably eventually, and then start kind of addressing the rest of the things. So just kind of know that, right? I'm working in a very specific manner because this is how we generally work, right? I'll probably do a design and stuff, and I'll show you next week and the week after and kind of like how I apply a lot of those things. But, you know, try to really resist putting all the small bells and whistles on there, right? Don't work on like small little cracks and small like, you know, set dressing things before you address the big things, right? Because you want to do 70% of the work first and then focus on the last 30%. So this week, right, really focus on the materials, really get this in a space where it feels like good, right? Because this painting is starting to work out pretty okay. We have two different materials here, or I guess technically three different that I've rendered so far, right? The stone kind of like major form, and then that kind of like metal shiny kind of like lacquered. It's supposed to look lacquered, kind of like the pen that we had earlier. And then we're gonna have this kind of gold bronzy kind of roof slash like trim stuff, and then we'll go from there. So I'm gonna kind of continue this throughout the week. Hopefully, I'll be pretty far with it by next week, and I'll kind of show you, like usual, kind of what I do. But yeah, hopefully that helps. For those of you here, right, or for those of you here or watching, now or later, if you have any questions on this, right, reach out to me, whether it's, through Discord. Please reach out to me through the Digital Vegetables Discord. That'd be a lot easier to kind of get my attention. I don't always see the private messages because Discord hides it until you friend me or whatever. But anyway, leave it in the comments of the YouTube. I'll try to get to them. If you have any questions, or save it till next week and we can talk about it, right? The reason why we have this the way it is, right, with people participating and able to talk, is because we want this to be a free form class that we can kind of communicate in and talk and, do things. So, take advantage of that, right? Like I was saying before, this is your chance to kind of meet people and say things. This is a forum not only for you to interact with me, but also the other people in this live stream. There's 6 other people, 7 earlier, right? Little things like that, it really does go a long way. A lot of you here do know each other, which is really cool. But some of you don't, right? Some of you that show up every week and have never interacted before, reach out, right? It's something where I don't think anybody here bites. If they did, they couldn't bite you through Discord, right? So, it is what it is. So, but yeah, so hopefully this makes sense, right? Hopefully that material breakdown from earlier, right, makes a lot of sense. Kind of like how I'm going about this, going from base textures, adding lighting, and then you can kind of convert this to be whatever you need it to be, right? So use that mentality, use that understanding, start applying this to your buildings and your various materials, the big shapes first, and then work small. You'll get a lot more mileage out of it that way. So but yeah, if there's any questions, actually, let me see, check the YouTube real quick. Oh, there we're good. Ian says, how would I get up to speed on the Tuesday sessions? The private stream stuff? How would you get up to speed? Like, are you asking how would you get up to speed in the sense that you're going to participate and do it? Or how you get up to speed in just like hearing the things? Because the lessons are recorded. So if you're part of the Livestream Plus, the sessions in there, they are recorded. So you'll be able to kind of watch those. For those of you that are like, you haven't started yet and you kind of want to like do something, we are on the later side. This is the 3rd week. So, what I would probably recommend doing is like, build out a quick model, do a quick sketch of a hard surface thing, architecture, vehicle, prop, whatever. If you're like this far along, like Ian, you can catch up pretty easily. So, just make a hard surface thing. For those of you that are like not Ian level, Ian's pretty good. For those of you that are a little more beginner, keep it small. Do a sword, do a prop, do a bag, do whatever. And you can kind of apply the ideas. These are all recorded. You can watch it again. You can follow at your speed. You can also participate after the fact as well. So, but for you, Ian, definitely like just create something hard surface, right? It could be a building, vehicle, architecture, whatever. And then try to get it to this kind of same phase that we're talking about here, right? Go through the ideation phase. Pick one that you like, apply the ideas, like kind of like what I did in week 2, and then now we're just gonna start painting it up or getting it to that level of what we need. For those that are like, if you know 3D, right? Like obviously for here, I just applied like green to a bush, dark gray to the dark gray thing, right? I didn't really push it that far because I want to kind of show you how I actually paint things. But for those of you that are more into 3D, you don't have to hold back like that. You do your thing and then you can assist it in the paint later. Just kind of know that. This is mainly for like people following along that maybe aren't as advanced, so they can kind of see me do things. But if you're more advanced, do what you need to do, and I'll kind of guide you along the way, right? So, but yeah, I guess with that in mind, guys, just let me know if you guys have any questions, and yeah, we'll just we'll talk about it next week. Bring questions, participate. I promise you, it pays off. I promise you, it does. So, all right, guys. Well, thanks for watching this week. Just I'd love to see what you guys do. So yeah.